Scrum roles, events, artifacts, and rules. Hello everyone, welcome to this lecture where we will cover Scrum roles, events, artifacts, and rules. In this lecture, you will learn about the implementation of Scrum. I did not want to split this lecture because these subjects make sense only when done together. The Scrum team consists of a product owner, the development team, and a Scrum master. Scrum teams are self-organizing and cross-functional. Self-organizing teams choose how best to accomplish their work rather than being directed by others outside the team. Cross-functional teams have all competencies needed to accomplish the work without depending on others not part of the team. The team model in Scrum is designed to optimize flexibility, creativity, and productivity. Optimal development team size is small enough to remain nimble and large enough to complete significant work within a sprint. Fewer than 3 development team members decrease interaction and results in smaller productivity gains. Smaller development teams may encounter skill constraints during the sprint, causing the development team to be unable to deliver a potentially releasable increment. Having more than 9 members requires too much coordination. Large development teams generate too much complexity for an empirical process to manage. The product owner and Scrum Master roles are not included in this count unless they are also executing the work of the sprint backlog. The Scrum Master is responsible for ensuring Scrum is understood and enacted. Scrum Masters do this by ensuring that the Scrum team adheres to Scrum theory, practices, and rules. The Scrum Master is a servant leader for the Scrum team. The Scrum Master helps those outside the Scrum team understand which of their interactions with the Scrum team are helpful and which aren't. The Scrum Master helps everyone change these interactions to maximize the value created by the Scrum team. The Scrum Master serves the product owner in several ways, including finding techniques for effective product backlog management, helping the Scrum team understand the need for clear and concise product backlog items, understanding product planning in an empirical environment, ensuring the product owner knows how to arrange the product backlog to maximize value, understanding and practicing agility, and facilitating Scrum events as requested or needed. The Scrum Master serves the development team in several ways, including coaching the development team in self-organization and cross-functionality, helping the development team to create high-value products, removing impediments to the development team's progress, facilitating Scrum events as requested or needed, and the Scrum Master serves the organization in several ways, including leading and coaching the organization in its Scrum adoption, planning Scrum implementations within the organization, helping employees and stakeholders understand and enact Scrum and empirical product development, causing change that increases the productivity of the Scrum team, and working with other Scrum Masters to increase the effectiveness of the application of Scrum in the organization. Now we will cover the events in Scrum, which are the sprint itself, sprint planning, daily Scrums, the sprint review, and the sprint retrospective. All events are time-boxed events, such that every event has a maximum duration. Once a sprint begins, its duration is fixed and cannot be shortened or lengthened. The remaining events may end whenever the purpose of the event is achieved, ensuring an appropriate amount of time is spent without allowing waste in the process. The heart of Scrum is the sprint, a time box of 1 month or less during which a done, usable, and potentially releasable product increment is created. Sprints best have consistent durations throughout a development effort. A new sprint starts immediately after the conclusion of the previous sprint. Other than the sprint itself, which is a container for all other events, each event in Scrum is a formal opportunity to inspect and adapt something. These events are specifically designed to enable critical transparency and inspection. Failure to include any of these events results in reduced transparency and is a lost opportunity to inspect and adapt. During the sprint, no changes are made that would endanger the sprint goal. Quality goals do not decrease, and scope may be clarified and renegotiated between the product owner and development team as more is learned. Each sprint may be considered a project with no more than a 1-month horizon. Like projects, sprints are used to accomplish something. Each sprint has a definition of what is to be built, a design and flexible plan that will guide building it, the work, and the resultant product. Sprints are limited to 1 calendar month. When a sprint's horizon is too long, the definition of what is being built may change, complexity may rise, and risk may increase. Sprints enable predictability by ensuring inspection and adaptation of progress toward a sprint goal, at least every calendar month. Sprints also limit risk to 1 calendar month of cost. A sprint can be cancelled before the sprint time box is over. Only the product owner has the authority to cancel the sprint, although he or she may do so under influence from the stakeholders, the development team, or the Scrum Master. A sprint would be cancelled if the sprint goal becomes obsolete. This might occur if the company changes direction or if market or technology conditions change. In general, a sprint should be cancelled if it no longer makes sense given the circumstances. But due to the short duration of sprints, cancellation rarely makes sense. When a sprint is cancelled, any completed and done product backlog items are reviewed. If part of the work is potentially releasable, the product owner typically accepts it. All incomplete product backlog items are re-estimated and put back on the product backlog. The work done on them depreciates quickly and must be frequently re-estimated. Sprint cancellations consume resources, since everyone has to regroup in another sprint planning to start another sprint. Sprint cancellations are often traumatic to the Scrum team and are very uncommon. The work to be performed in the sprint is planned at the sprint planning. This plan is created by the collaborative work of the entire Scrum team. Sprint planning is time-boxed to a maximum of 8 hours for a 1-month sprint. For shorter sprints, the event is usually shorter. The Scrum Master ensures that the event takes place and that attendants understand its purpose. The Scrum Master teaches the Scrum team to keep it within the time box. Sprint planning answers the following. What can be delivered in the increment resulting from the upcoming sprint? How will the work needed to deliver the increment be achieved? The sprint goal is an objective set by the sprint that can be met through the implementation of the product backlog. It provides guidance to the development team on why it is building the increment. It is created during the sprint planning meeting. The sprint goal gives the development team some flexibility regarding the functionality implemented within the sprint. The selected product backlog items deliver one coherent function, which can be the sprint goal. The sprint goal can be any other coherence that causes the development team to work together rather than on separate initiatives. As the development team works, it keeps the sprint goal in mind. In order to satisfy the sprint goal, it implements the functionality and technology. If the work turns out to be different than the development team expected, they collaborate with the product owner to negotiate the scope of sprint backlog within the sprint. The daily Scrum is a 15-minute time-boxed event for the development team to synchronize activities and create a plan for the next 24 hours. This is done by inspecting the work since the last daily Scrum and forecasting the work that could be done before the next one. The daily Scrum is held at the same time and place each day to reduce complexity. During the meeting, the development team members explain, "What did I do yesterday that helped the development team meet the sprint goal? What will I do today to help the development team meet the sprint goal? Do I see any impediment that prevents me or the development team from meeting the sprint goal?" The development team uses the daily Scrum to inspect progress toward the sprint goal and to inspect how progress is trending toward completing the work in the sprint backlog. The daily Scrum optimizes the probability that the development team will meet the sprint goal. Every day, the development team should understand how it intends to work together as a self-organizing team to accomplish the sprint goal and create the anticipated increment by the end of the sprint. The development team or team members often meet immediately after the daily Scrum for detailed discussions or to adapt or replan the rest of the sprint's work. The Scrum Master ensures that the development team has the meeting, but the development team is responsible for conducting the daily Scrum. The Scrum Master teaches the development team to keep the daily Scrum within the 15-minute time box. The Scrum Master enforces the rule that only development team members participate in the daily Scrum. Daily Scrums improve communications, eliminate other meetings, identify impediments to development for removal, highlight and promote quick decision-making, and improve the development team's level of knowledge. This is a key aspect. A sprint review is held at the end of the sprint to inspect the increment and adapt the product backlog if needed. During the sprint review, the Scrum team and stakeholders collaborate about what was done in the sprint. Based on that and any changes to the product backlog during the sprint, attendees collaborate on the next set of things that could be done to optimize value. This is an informal meeting, not a status meeting, and the presentation of the increment is intended to elicit feedback and foster collaboration. This is a 4-hour time-boxed meeting for 1-month sprints. For shorter sprints, the event is usually shorter. The Scrum Master ensures that the event takes place and that attendants understand its purpose. The Scrum Master teaches all to keep it within the time box. The sprint review includes the following elements. Attendees include the Scrum team and key stakeholders invited by the product owner. The product owner explains which product backlog items have been done and which items have not been done. The development team discusses what went well during the sprint, which problems it ran into, and how those problems were solved. The development team demonstrates the work that it has done and answers questions about the increment. The product owner discusses the product backlog as it stands. He or she projects likely completion dates based on progress to date, if needed. The entire group collaborates on what to do next, so that the sprint review provides valuable input to subsequent sprint planning. Review of the timeline, budget, potential capabilities, and marketplace for the next anticipated release of the product. The result of the sprint review is a revised product backlog that defines the probable product backlog items for the next sprint. The product backlog may also be adjusted overall to meet new opportunities. The sprint retrospective is an opportunity for the Scrum team to inspect itself and create a plan for improvements to be enacted during the next sprint. The sprint retrospective occurs after the sprint review and prior to the next sprint planning. This is a 3-hour time-boxed meeting for 1-month sprints. For shorter sprints, the event is usually shorter. The Scrum Master ensures that the event takes place and that attendants understand its purpose. The Scrum Master teaches all to keep it within the time box. The Scrum Master participates as a peer team member in the meeting from the accountability over the Scrum process. The purpose of the sprint retrospective is to inspect how the last sprint went with regards to people, relationships, process, and tools. Identify and order the major items that went well and potential improvements. And create a plan for implementing improvements to the way the Scrum team does its work. The Scrum Master encourages the Scrum team to improve within the Scrum process framework. Its development process and practices make it more effective and enjoyable for the next sprint. During each sprint retrospective, the Scrum team plans ways to increase product quality by adapting the definition of done as appropriate. By the end of the sprint retrospective, the Scrum team should have identified improvements that it will implement in the next sprint. Implementing these improvements in the next sprint is the adaptation to the inspection of the Scrum team itself. Although improvements may be implemented at any time, the sprint retrospective provides a formal opportunity to focus on inspection and adaptation. Until now, we've covered all the events in Scrum. Now we will study the artifacts, which are the product backlog, sprint backlog, and the increment. They represent work or value to provide transparency and opportunities for inspection and adaptation. Artifacts defined by Scrum are specifically designed to maximize transparency of key information, so that everybody has the same understanding of the artifact. The product backlog is an ordered list of everything that might be needed in the product and is the single source of requirements for any changes to be made to the product. The product owner is responsible for the product backlog, including its content, availability, and ordering. A product backlog is never complete. The earliest development of it only lays out the initially known and best understood requirements. The product backlog evolves as the product and the environment in which it will be used evolves. The product backlog is dynamic. It constantly changes to identify what the product needs to be appropriate, competitive, and useful. As long as a product exists, its product backlog also exists. The product backlog lists all features, functions, requirements, enhancements, and fixes that constitute the changes to be made to the product in future releases. Product backlog items have the attributes of a description, order, estimate, and value. The sprint backlog is the set of product backlog items selected for the sprint, plus a plan for delivering the product increment and realizing the sprint goal. The sprint backlog is a forecast by the development team about what functionality will be in the next increment and the work needed to deliver that functionality into a done increment. The sprint backlog makes visible all of the work that the development team identifies as necessary to meet the sprint goal. The sprint backlog is a plan with enough detail that changes in progress can be understood in the daily Scrum. The development team modifies the sprint backlog throughout the sprint, and the sprint backlog emerges during the sprint. This emergence occurs as the development team works through the plan and learns more about the work needed to achieve the sprint goal. The increment is the sum of all the product backlog items completed during a sprint, and the value of the increments of all previous sprints. The new increment must be done, which means it must be in a usable condition and meet the Scrum team's definition of done. It must be in a usable condition regardless of whether the product owner decides to actually release it. When a product backlog item or an increment is described as done, everyone must understand what done means. Although this varies significantly per Scrum team, members must have a shared understanding of what it means for work to be complete to ensure transparency. This is the definition of done for the Scrum team and is used to assess when work is complete on the product increment. With all the lectures until now, we have covered the basics of Scrum. Now you know what Scrum is and how to implement Scrum with your team. In the following lectures, we will dive deep into product owner role, product owner's responsibilities, and best practices in agile product management.